Hey everybody, welcome back to the 32 team franchise. We are going to actually do a 2-week update, week 7 and week 8. I have been able to get more playing in and getting more games through. Sorry for the lack of highlights I'm going to be sharing just because it takes a long time to go through each game and take those clips out to make a longer video. I still might get those highlights at some point, but for right now, we're just going to do an update for week 7 and week 8 as we are making great progress. So the first one here is the Kansas City Chiefs. They have Kevin O'Connell coming in instead of Brandon Weeden. So O'Connell is known for coming away with tight victories. It's normally messy, like he has 2 interceptions, but he finds a way of coming up with the victory, beating the Texans. Then we have this Sanchez with 1 interception, Lacey 83 yards, a touchdown, Trent Richardson 67 yards. Kyle Rudolph, we see he is the third-year tight end, having a great game, 150 yards. Justin Hunter with 2 touchdowns, and then not really much receiving at all. I mean, 67 yards for Sanchez, not a great game for the Texans. Then we've got the Packers losing narrowly to the Chicago Bears with the 2-point conversion to win the game. Campbell with 237 yards, but 3 interceptions, 96 yards by Ingram. And as you can see, Jordan Cameron, the tight end, has been really good for the Packers. He was originally a Cleveland Brown, which is how I kind of know him, but he's been a very reliable target this season for Matthew Stafford. And then Eddie Royal over here with 131 yards and a touchdown. Bears win narrowly. Dallas comes away with a 2-point conversion victory. We see that Russell Wilson with 2 and 2, 258 yards, 58 yards rushing for Peterson. Leftwich with 198 yards, and John Kuhn threw a touchdown pass. I think it was the same play they'd used for Taysom Hill since he's a tight end. So I think Kuhn was being the third tight end or whatever position he was supposed to be. And so he ended up throwing a touchdown to Brandon Marshall. Some of these, again, I mean, if you really want to see that play, leave a comment and I'll try to get that play for everybody. But big upset for the Saints as they were trying to come away with some wins here to stay competitive in the NFC, but instead it's Dallas who gets the victory. Then we see the Jaguars with Colt McCoy coming away with the victory over the Washington Commanders. McCoy with 278 yards, 3 touchdowns. Murray with 67 yards. Mike Goodson with 97 yards rushing for Washington. And Vic, 197 and 41 yards on the ground. Pittsburgh tries to extend their lead in the AFC North, but falls short to the Miami Dolphins, who get the win. We see 321 yards by Newton with 4 TDs versus 288 yards and 3 TDs. Forte did practically nothing, but so did Lamar Miller. And then pretty much a receiving by committee. Everyone getting about 70-some yards, 60-some yards. And then we see Pittsburgh with Michael Floyd and Delaney Walker with both 90 yards, Emmanuel Sanders, but it was Michael Floyd with the touchdowns. The Bengals are still winless. We see the Jets here with Smith going with 176 yards and 2 TDs, 81 yards by Portis. Not a good game for the Jets, but a good enough game to beat the Bengals. We see Derek Anderson in his debut, I believe. I think this is his first game as a Bengal. They fall 329 yards is great. We see James Hardy picking up, but 2 interceptions, 4 sacks. He just could not have time to throw. Falls to the Jets there. We got the Buffalo Bills falling to the Titans, who are having a fantastic year. We see the Bills that they had that momentum going their way, and now they're kind of plateauing. Brad Smith has still had a good start to the season with Greg Jennings injured, but now Greg Jennings back, and we see him getting 113 yards and 2 TDs with Slater getting 1. Titans are looking like they're the number 1 team in the AFC, and they're keeping it going. Then a very tight game. We see a Super Bowl rematch, the 2013 Super Bowl rematch between the Colts and the Eagles, and this time the Eagles win it again. We see McNabb with 4 touchdowns and 363 yards, Brady Quinn with 192 yards and 3 passing touchdowns. We see Chris Johnson 127 yards, Frank Gore 110 yards, so good for them. Eagles continue to get those wins. We see Oakland, who's actually moving into first place here in the AFC West, defeating the NFC West St. Louis Rams. We see Luck with 3 interceptions, a major cause for their loss. We see Matt Ryan with 338 yards, 4 touchdowns. Very minimal running for the Oakland Raiders. But then there's Julio Jones, 9 receptions, 230 yards, and 4 touchdowns. All 4 of his touchdowns going to Julio. He's just like Calvin Johnson. He can make a lot of things happen. So Oakland having a pretty solid year with Hugh Jackson. Then we got the Denver Broncos coming away with a surprising victory over the 49ers. So 31-13 was pretty much no contest. Breeze just kept having turnovers, so wasn't pleased with that. MJD only 45 yards. We see AJ Green with 131 yards receiving out of Sam Bradford's 266 yards and 2 TDs. Bradshaw with 58 yards. Then we've got the Cardinals just pummeling the Panthers. Andy Dalton with 4 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown. Beanie Wells with 53 yards. Mike Wallace, again, the superstar, league leader here with 175 yards and 2 TDs. Ed Dixon and Dallas Clark there with 1 touchdown each. T.Y. Hilton also was doing fantastic. I mean, Flacco just lobbed those up, and he kept bringing in touchdowns. 169 nice yards, 3 TDs, but the Panthers were unable to come away with the win. Then you've got the Chargers, who were able to deliver the first loss for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers after having their bye week. So we see right now the Buccaneers, they've lost 2 games in a row, so a big surprise coming up. But 3 TDs, 300 yards, not enough. Rodgers with 4 TDs, 1 interception, and then Arian Foster was the man with 141 rushing yards. Gates getting most of Rodgers's passing yards. Steve Smith getting 2 touchdowns. Holmes 2 touchdowns. Josh Gordon, he's been doing pretty well since coming back from his suspension. 2 touchdowns, 105 yards. Macklin and Simpson up there too. Simpson with that 52-yard grab. Then you got the Cleveland Browns with 4 interceptions from Terrell Pryor. So that was not great. Plus he fumbled. But he had 276 yards and he threw 5 touchdowns. But then you have Peyton Manning throwing for 5 touchdowns, but only 2 interceptions and 295 yards. So, of course, Peyton Manning comes away with the win. We have, what's his name? Le'Veon Bell is injured, so LeGarrette Blount and Jamal Lord are taking the snaps for the running game in Atlanta, which basically just means that instead of having more rushing attempts, we have 36 passing attempts. Travis Benjamin with 91 yards. We see Fitzgerald with 117 and 3 touchdowns. Roddy White got most of the touchdowns for Pryor. I mean, he just lobbed it up and Roddy White was right there. So that's week 7. Week 8, we can see the Buffalo Bills falling narrowly to the Jets. So this is how the Jets are ascending to 6-2. Got some confidence after beating up on the winless Bengals. Tim Tebow, 257 yards, 2 touchdowns, not enough. Kareem has 44 yards, while Portis had 54. Harvin leads the game in receiving with 122. Then you got the Patriots, who are trying to bounce back. They were 3-3, then they went into the bye week, and then they were able to beat the Baltimore Ravens against Eli Manning. Manning is 0-2 as a Baltimore Raven, so maybe it wasn't Seattle, maybe it was Eli Manning. But we have Jamal Charles with 78 yards. We have Charles also with a receiving touchdown and 68. I think Jamal Charles, they say he's the league leader in receiving yards for running backs. So he's doing a great job there. And then we have the Bengals getting obliterated once again, but this time by the Tennessee Titans, who are right now in first place and clearly in first place. I think they're ahead by 2 games maybe. No, they're ahead by 1 because the Jets are 6-2. But Jackson, 3 touchdowns, 197 yards, beautiful QBR, 5 sacks for Anderson. This man's getting just pummeled. He's got 9 sacks in 3 starts. That's right. So that was the Jets game was not his first game, but he went 38 yards. Oh no, maybe no. Okay, he started 2 games, 7 and 8. He filled in for injured Brock Osweiler. And so in 2 games, he's been sacked 9 times. And then Brock Osweiler has been sacked 10 times in the first 5 games. So Anderson is just like, hey, I'm going to come in and be a starter, and then he gets his clock cleaned. Then we've got the next game here. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers fall once more. So they are on a 2-game losing streak after the bye week. And you have Flacco with 4 touchdowns defeating them. Gabbert with 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and 100 yards with McFadden rushing. Booker and Tate combined for about 137, with Tate getting the touchdown. Not much passing there, but we see Macklin leading the way this time. But all their 3 top receivers get touchdowns. Then we got the Washington Commanders, 14-24 against the Detroit Lions. Lions get their 2nd win of the year against the Commanders. So we got the Commanders looking for a bye week coming up. They're 2-6. Lions 2-5. So no, other than Reggie Bush, 144 yards, rushes more than Tannehill passed. 2 touchdowns. Bush had some big breakaway rushes, which is what really helped them in this game. But Detroit Lions get the win here. Then we've got the Chicago Bears going 21-14 against the New York Giants. The Giants were really hoping to get this win to go 5-2 because they're trying to stay competitive in that NFC East. They were tied with the Eagles, but now they're falling a little bit behind. We see that, falling behind the division because we see, or the league, we see that the Bears are kind of taking that possible 2nd or 3rd seed if they keep playing at this level. Actually, they could even be 1st seed. I got to double check and see. They actually could be 1st because of the Buccaneers falling behind. But Campbell, another perfect QBR game, 219, 3 touchdowns. We see Palmer with 2 interceptions, but 83 yards by Matthews, only 45 by Ingram. But Royal, again, gets 130 yards. Aroma Shodu, 103. Then the Packers, who are having a rough year. I mean, they're going up against some good teams, but there's a lot of good teams, and they're not able to come away with the wins. Stafford with 172 yards, McCoy with 75, goes up against Newton with 255 yards, more interceptions, but also Newton had 88 yards rushing, with Forte pounding 3 rushing touchdowns in. Calvin Johnson gets a touchdown on 103 yards for the Miami Dolphins victory to go up 6-2 on the year. Then the Chiefs fall 2-6. We see Kevin O'Connell had some magic last week to pull off the win, but can't do it against the Chargers. Chargers with 267 yards from Trent Edwards, since Aaron Rodgers had a bruised sternum, so concussion. And then Arian Foster got 123 yards. He's been running very well for them. And so when Rodgers is having some sluggishness or getting injured, they still have this man here, Arian Foster from the 49ers, picking up the workload and just delivering the win for them. Steve Smith got some big catches there for 106 yards, only 3 receptions. Edwards did a good job of spreading the ball around, but Edwards was able to overcome O'Connell. So that's a 69 overall QB versus a 71 overall QB. And then we've got the really pathetic game here by the Texans and Jaguars. You can see 5 interceptions by Colt McCoy. Let's just say this week I was a little bit distracted, and that's a bad thing. So a lot of turnovers there. Those 5 interceptions led the Jaguars to not being able to score a touchdown at all. We see the Texans getting 2 touchdowns, 1 to Hopkins and 1 to C.J. Spiller. Then you have the Vikings, who squeak out a victory against the Rams. The Rams, we see 86 yards and 3 touchdowns for RG3. Very weak performance by him. Luck with 203 yards and 2 touchdowns. So that's all very mediocre for them, but it was a very tight game, very close game. We see Gronkowski got the most receptions and catches there, but again, 86 yards is not much to spread around. Then you got the Browns versus the Eagles, and of course the Eagles just clobbered them. Deshaun Jackson was making big catches, Ted Ginn making big catches, 285 yards, 3 touchdowns for McNabb, 66 yards for Gore. Pryor with 242. Also 50 yards rushing and 3 rushing touchdowns. Pryor was all with his leg, but it was not enough to carry them over the Eagles. Then you got the Oakland Raiders, 35, crushing the Arizona Cardinals. This was a great victory for Matt Ryan. He's had coming back from back-to-back really good games. I mean, we look at, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 338, 225. And really his beginning part of the season, other than this 3 touchdown, 0 interception game, he hasn't had that great of a year, but he's already at 2,000 yards, 21 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Having a good season here for the Raiders, who are first place in their division. Dalton with 4 interceptions did not help the Cardinals. So again, my interception streak continued. Then we've got the Seahawks falling short again to the Denver Broncos. We see Denver having a decent game with 2-2 with Bradford, 118 yards. Bradshaw, he had like a whole complaining thing with the GM, like you know how they're the coach story mode. So in the story mode, Bradshaw wanted more touches. He wanted 4 receptions and 10 attempts, so I just kept giving him the ball. So Bradshaw's happy with me, and I guess Bradshaw walks in and says, "See, I told you if you give me more catches, I'll win." Even though they're facing one of the worst teams in the league with the Seattle Seahawks. But anyway, they get the win. And then the Steelers were trying to extend their lead in the AFC North. They still hold it, and I'll show you later, but they're only 3-5. And the Colts, who are 4th place in the AFC South, we saw Quinn with 3 touchdowns, 177 yards. They allowed Kirk Cousins to get some garbage time. He threw 2 passes. Chris Johnson, almost 100 yards, but they didn't need it because 4 interceptions by Big Ben and just bad offense by Pittsburgh was not able to keep up. And we see a Colts triumph there on Sunday Night Football. And then you've got the Saints versus the 49ers. And here the Saints start to, I mentioned they were marching on before, and they seem to be stumbling now. You see 4 touchdowns by Drew Brees, 56 yards by Jones-Drew. Tack on another 39 yards by Brees, so good game for him. Des Bryant with 3 of those touchdowns, and Brent Selleck with 1. So those are the last 2 weeks. So if we look at the team standings, we look at the divisions. Right now, New England is still outside looking in. They had their first bye week, so they do have a game to make up. We see the Jets and the Dolphins are 6-2, both likely in the playoffs based off of how this picture is looking. Pittsburgh is leading the way to make the playoffs, and they might not even have a positive record. They just have to be better than Baltimore and Cleveland, which is actually possible. And then you have the Tennessee Titans, who are 3 games ahead, and they're 1 game ahead of the Jets and Dolphins. They're going to likely be the number 1 seed, if not number 2 at the worst case. And then you get the Texans, Jaguars, and Colts trying to fight for that wild card spot along with the Patriots. And then you got the Chargers, Broncos, and Raiders. Raiders just ahead by 1 game. Very competitive division, even though they're not doing that great overall. Again, you see the Titans and the Jets and Dolphins definitely being the teams to sort of beat. They're the front runners. Then you've got the Eagles, who are now 2 games ahead of the Giants and 2 games ahead of the Cowboys. Eagles and Cowboys play this week, so we'll see how that game turns out. Then you look at the Chicago Bears are ahead 6-2. They are, I don't know if they're first or tied for first with the Eagles, but they're winning their division by 2 games. They get the Vikings, and then Detroit and Green Bay are having a rough start. We see 2-0 and now 0-6. So the Packers have just been losing consistently. Buccaneers are on a 2-game losing streak. Falcons on a 2-game win streak. Both these 2 teams look like they could probably be in the playoffs. Panthers are right, trying to at that cusp. They were able to beat the Buccaneers, but they weren't. They're still kind of a few games behind for that wild card seed. This division is more so to watch for that wild card, more so than this one. It's probably going to be the Falcons, Giants, and then we'll see if it's the Vikings, Cowboys, Panthers, Cardinals. Speaking of the West, we see the 49ers ahead by 1 game, Cardinals 4-4, and then you know the fate of Seattle and St. Louis. If we look at the worst team in the league right now, it's the Bengals, Packers, Chiefs, Browns, Commanders, Ravens, Lions, Seahawks, Rams, Saints. And so I'll see if the Bengals actually go for a quarterback, or they might just go with Jadeveon Clowney. That might be smarter. So here are some of the top 5 quarterbacks in passing. Here they are in touchdowns. If you're interested, you can go ahead and pause it and take a look. Rushing, we have Chris Johnson, McFadden, Foster, Portis, and Matthews. Touchdowns is Forte all the way. Then you got Mike Wallace still in the lead there, 998 here in week 9. Harvin, Julio, Deshaun, Brad Smith. Brad Smith might start to drop as Greg Jennings gets more and more attention. I didn't show touchdowns. Des Bryant leads the league in touchdowns. Then we got tackles. We've got sacks. So the Browns used to have a lot of sacks. Now it's starting to diversify a bit. J.J. Watt, Walden, and Trenton Cole taking that spot. Then we see interceptions. DeQuell Jackson got one. And actually, we look at touchdowns. It's Chris Houston, Patrick Peterson getting some touchdowns there for their defense. And then we got some kicking stats. I don't know why there's only 31. Is there a kicker I haven't kicked with? Has to be. Huh. I have to look into that. Oh, because just a Metlock, did he do a punt? Is that why? Is Metlock? Oh, he's there. All right, I'm missing a kicker somehow, but that's okay. We'll figure it out later. But anyway, we got an exciting Week 9 coming up. I just want to make sure you got this update because it's nice to, for those of you who like the story mode. One factor is that John Harbaugh has been fired from the Cincinnati Bengals, and I am promoting Johnny Holland. He's not Holland Gibbs, but Johnny Holland to the head coaching position for the rest of the season. Bengals are just that abysmal that after 6-11 season, 0-7 is not tolerable for the Brown family, and so they are cutting ties. I'll let you know if any other updates come in. I don't think there really has been. Let's see, transactions. These are some re-signs. The Eli Manning trade, we all talked about that one. Yeah, because sometimes I'll sign like somebody if there's an injury or I have to make sure I have enough linebackers or enough defensive ends. But I don't think I've done that in a while. But yeah, we're already several weeks in. Hope you are enjoying this journey with me as we are in year 12, season 12 of this franchise. But leave a like on the video if you like this content and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more Madden content. I also do a lot of Political Machine and some other games as well. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.